Thank you, Richard. And thank you to the I2N for having me to speak here this morning. It is a fantastic... clicking? Yep. Okay. Am I on?
You're on.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, Richard and Siobhan do amazing work here at the I2N, and they've helped so many amazing startups. Newcastle in general has a fantastic startup community at the moment, and actually joining some of these initiatives, I've found out just how amazing it is.
That's not your slides.
Oh, that's Zoom, yes. Yeah.
You're going to jump into your talk about slides now.
Yeah, no worries. So my startup story is quite different to the ones that everyone's seeing on the streaming services at the moment. And that is a good thing, because the people in those specials have generally done something very wrong. So I'm not exactly new to business. I have been the director of a consulting company, Hunter Orbit, for over 10 years now. But actually growing a startup was something that I never saw myself doing. So my co-founders and I, we've all been in the corporate world for a very long time, with over 20 years experience. And that is something that I think has really served us as a startup, specifically for open banking. So it is a highly regulated industry, and it really pays to know how banking worked back when it was closed. So my IT journey started as a nerdy student in Port Macquarie. So this was around the turn of the 21st century, so the original dot-com boom was just gaining momentum. And IT was only really just becoming a mainstream career path. I remember when I was choosing courses, my father trying to convince me to do information science instead of computing science, because he thought being exclusively in tech was too specialised. So things have certainly changed a lot. So the University of Newcastle, where I studied, was appealing to me because they were the ones that put the effort into reaching out to students in regional areas. So this was something that the Sydney unis didn't do at the time. So as a regional student, I felt that I would be a lot more welcome and understood at the University of Newcastle than I would have been at any other institution. And I also can't really tell my story without mentioning my business and life partner, Mark, who also started his IT career as a nerdy teenager in Port Macquarie, who has been with me for all the ups and downs of the last 20 years. So having someone who is also so brilliant in our field, but also so supportive, has allowed me to achieve much more than I would have on my own. During my first year of university, I was very lucky to be able to get a cadetship at Covalent, which means I could combine work and study, and even better, not pay university fees. So at Covalent, I started in the quality assurance area. So that is where you are testing software before it goes out to the customers, and being a financial company, they're a subsidiary of Westpac focusing on credit card and these days many other payment methods. It is very important that you get this stuff right. My time at Covalent, I was actually able to experience a lot of roles. So I was in functions such as customer support, software development, requirements, engineering, and customer onboarding. I was at Covalent for almost 17 years. This sounds like a very long time, but when you are finishing university, starting your career, starting a family, it goes by incredibly quickly. So at this point, my career was taking a bit of a pivot. I wanted to go into a more business-facing role and into something managerial. So I actually started and completed my MBA again at the University of Newcastle, the modern one this time, and started at NIB. At NIB I had the role of application product manager. So that was both a people management and a product management role. And there I was actually able to exercise leadership skills, not only the management of direct reports, but exerting influence in a larger organisation. Being able to be in a larger business that wasn't an IT company gave me exposure to a lot of other areas of the business and made me understand their needs, which has been something that's been really beneficial in the open banking area. Because the people that want to use this, they're not tech heads. They are brokers, accountants, and they've been using their current processes for a long time. So during my time in financial tech, I had built a large network. And it was through this network that Mark and I met our other co-founder, Eric, who doesn't realise his picture is on the board right now. So our idea to get together was that between us we have over 60 years of financial technology and payment experience. And this was about the time the government were really starting to implement open banking. So as we're thinking, we're pretty old school fintech and payments people. We have the right skill set to make that happen. Hence where the long corporate career came in handy for the startup. So open banking is a legislative initiative by the Australian government. And the fact that it is legislation is quite important because the banks clearly need quite a large stick to actually give away what is very valuable data. Now, it is managed by the Treasury and the ACCC. And to actually get any open banking data through what we call the consumer data right, there is quite a process, which I will go into later. But here is some of the things that the consumer data right will enable. It is currently now just for open banking, but the goal of the consumer data right is for you as consumers to be able to take all the data that you've given your bank, given your electricity company, given Telstra, given anyone, and you can decide, oh, I'm going to give this to, say, my financial advisor. So they can have a great view without going through all your bank statements of where you're spending your money, where you could be spending it a lot more efficiently, or finding out if all of a sudden you've come into a lot of money and gone, hey, maybe there's this investment opportunity over here. So this is good for you as consumers because you have more power to get the best deal on all of these products. Hence why the banks needed to be legislated to give this, because this is very much for you, not them. And as you can see here, there's going to be a lot of different areas that you can do. So CDR is currently working on energy and telecommunication. Next cabbed off the rank are going to be investment and insurance products. Now, security is front of mind for open banking and the CDR. So there is a very lengthy accreditation process. Now, this is a huge challenge being a startup because we were a tiny 3-person team and we needed to implement something similar to, if you're familiar with corporate standards, SOC 2, PCI, DSS, so something that huge companies have massive $1 million budgets to be able to manage it. We were very lucky that Mark specifically had a lot of experience with corporate regulations. So we were able to get our accreditation much cheaper than anyone else has been able to, thanks to, again, our corporate knowledge. So as you can see, there's 115 data holders. Now, at the moment, those are banks and credit unions. There's a lot of talk about including non-bank lenders on their list. I think that is something that would make open banking a lot more powerful. Something curious that we found is PayPal is also a data holder, so you can get your PayPal account data through open banking. And 22 fully accredited data recipients. So there is 22 people that have gone through that process. Now, many of these are actually banks that seem to be at the moment just sitting on their open banking data accreditation. And there's quite a few that were the early players, such as Frollo and Adatree, and their focus has been very much enabling those 115 data holders. So from this, you can kind of hear that there's a big gap where no one's actually doing all this. So that's where Skript's coming in with our products. So we're actually taking this open banking and talking to the mortgage brokers, the accountants, the financial advisors, the people who could really use this data, and working out how it could work with them. Because is your average mortgage broker going to spend $100,000 to get ADR accreditation, get all this raw data through an API, create an app to actually do something? They're certainly not. So this is where things are going to get quite exciting for Skript, because we're actually working with these stakeholders, looking at their processes, working out how this extra data is going to work for them. Because one thing that's common across all these industries is they're not using the latest and greatest technology now. These people love Excel, they love printed out bank statements and a highlighter. So not only is the challenge going, hey, here's this data, it's how about you stop getting all these documents through insecure mechanisms such as email, and how about, you actually stop just using an Excel spreadsheet for all your data. So this is where I think we're going to make a really big impact with open banking, actually bridging the gap between the amazing technical solutions that government has put together and the day-to-day reality of the people that actually need this financial data. So one thing we found out pretty early on in the journey is between the technical requirements and the accreditation, it was going to take more than the three of us to actually get something to market here. It is one drawback that an open banking startup has as opposed to other web-based startups is we need to do a huge amount of development and infrastructure work up front to even get a prototype out to customers. So we were quite lucky with our timing, as anyone who's keeping an eye on the VC and fintech market knows, it is pretty grim at the moment. But early on in our journey, we were actually able to secure some funding. So this was something we did by going through the VC route. We were able to find a couple of great investors, and talking to other people that were with them, we were able to know that these were the ones for us. So now we have an amazing team at Skript, and we have implemented some fantastic solutions that we're looking to pilot with customers. So day to day of running a startup, I do love working with our team. They have amazing ideas for open banking. I've learnt so much from them. Day to day, I also am the primary front-end developer and requirements engineer for the company. So managing this with the actual task of running a business is certainly a challenge to do everything to an acceptable standard. But I do really enjoy getting back on the tools, even if there has been a massive learning curve, and have always incredibly patient teaching me how to code. So 2022 for Skript, it has really been the year of the hard graft. So we managed to get our accreditation, we have put together fantastic software architecture that's going to scale, going to be secure, going to actually fulfill all the requirements of accessing the consumer data right, which is quite onerous and something that when we've had to do in the past, we've had massive teams and massive budgets. So 2023, that is the year that Skript is really going to burst onto the market. So we are going to complete our pilots, make sure that our pilot customers are happy, and then we're really going to get out there and tell the world about these amazing solutions that we have. And on the government, regulation and tech side, there are so many more amazing things that we want to keep an eye on. So the government's Pay To initiative, which is an extension of the NPP platform that actually allows, similar to the CDR, for you to consent to a scheduled payment. So this is real-time payments from your account, but it's a bit more intelligent than anything that has ever been out there, because it allows you to actually say, yes, I would like my gym to debit me $50 every month for the next 2 years. So this is something that's quite powerful, that has not been there before. And in much newer initiatives, the government is also looking at something called Connect ID. So this goes in quite well with open banking and Pay To, as it is actually an not open ID, I won't use that word, but universally recognised financial ID that can be used to authenticate people across services. There are similar initiatives overseas, and those who have used them speak quite highly of them, so this is something that I'm really looking forward to. I want to say thank you again to the I2N Hub for having me here to speak today, and thank you to all of you who made the early morning journey in to listen. If you'd like to find out more about Skript, please contact us through our website, skript.com.au. It's Skript with a K. And you can find me on LinkedIn or the I2N or Newy Slack channels. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'd just like to acknowledge that Sarah is also one of our BMS mentors. We have a mentor program, and Sarah gives her time to mentor new startups and founders, their ventures and their teams as part of that program. So you wear many, many hats, as we've heard. Front-end developer, people leader, you've got this rich experience. Having you able to share that in the program is hyper valuable to us, so thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
So in this section, we just go through a few questions that have been submitted by registrants. So we'll start with some business-related questions. And we've got one here from Ray, who asks, did you apply for any business grants? And do you have any recommendations to other startups who want to apply for grants and funding?
It is something that we've looked at, but it's generally been put to the wayside because we've decided to pursue customers instead. So applying for a grant is something that takes a lot of time. And there are entire companies related to just finding and getting you grants. One thing I would advise for any business who is looking for them is to be always on the lookout for new ones. So we have found in our 100 Orbit journey there were grants that we would have liked to have, but we didn't really see them until they were expired. So one thing that's been good for Skript is the government's R&D tax offset. So that's where, if say you are a business like Skript that's had to put a lot of effort into defining a new architecture, working out the new areas of open banking, you can actually claim back the expenses that you incurred doing that research. So that is something that has been quite good for Skript. And yeah, certainly something that we found of a much higher value than the grants. It is generally something you wouldn't do on your own. You would hire a specialist to actually get the R&D tax offset.
There's a lot of support out there, both through us and other government and non-government agencies, for people who are looking for grants and who want to take up the R&D tax incentive. It's like, I think we've had one founder in the past, another startup stories, who described the R&D tax incentive as having every year having an angel investor come by and drop a little bit of cash in your back pocket so you can spend it on your next year of development and keep that cycle going. So it's very helpful. If anyone wants to know more about grants, we hold 2 grant events each year. We've got one coming up in October. You mentioned that you went for VC funding, I'm guessing pre-pandemic.
Not pre-pandemic, but pre the current market
So what
slump.
was it like telling your story at that time to VCs, to investors, and what was the reception like? How were they feeling about your product, your journey, and where you wanted to take them?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, the challenge with open banking is there's a lot of work we do to actually get a product, and the open banking initiative itself is quite new. So we had some real challenges there, talking VCs around into something that, the legislation is in progress. There's a couple of years until it's going to be something that we can really get off the ground for everyone. We need to be accredited, and our solution requires a heck of a lot of development. I think it's almost being compared to new drug development in that it has the massive lead time. So it was really important that we found VCs that were passionate about the open banking space, so they were on board with the fact that it was going to take us a long time, and they understood that. As far as telling our story, in the early stage, it is really more the founders that VCs are looking at than the idea. So this is where we mentioned that we have over 60 years of payment experience, and we're very experienced in the banking sector, which is something that the VCs really loved.
So we've got a question here from Tim. He asks, what makes banking ethical, and how is ethical banking and the fintech industry disrupting the finance world?
Yeah, so I'm tempted to say the answer is the government with a great big stick makes banking ethical. And that is certainly something that we've seen with the open banking initiative. It would not have got off the ground without some serious legislative power behind it. And anyone remembers a few years ago that the banking sector did have a royal commission where a lot of the skeletons were brought out of the closet. So I think, regulation is key with the banks. It's probably not so safe to trust them to do exactly what they want. But yes, this innovation with open banking, it lays it all out. The banks have to report on every single one of their products.
Yeah.
And it's a common format, so, so these products can be compared, and in this format they can be compared much easier than they ever were before. And with the data that you can give with open banking, you can see exactly what your bank has on you, and you can compare this to the data given by other banks, so you have much more power to choose the best deal.
It seems, in my interpretation of using other products, it sounds like when you get your Equifax report, you can see what's in that for your credit, and then see where things are coming out of your account and where you've made loans and what your rating is. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, it is similar to that. So the types of data you can get are common customer data, so that is what the bank has on you, name, address, or things like that, and account data. So you get detailed data on your account. You get the rules, the interest rates, terms and conditions on that account, when you joined, balances, and transactions is the day-to-day activity. So it's really arguably the most powerful part of the open banking data, because that's where you can really do the processing and get the insights for your customer.
Awesome. We've got a question here from Cam Moore, who's the founder of Grubbelow, who's also an I-20 Accelerator participant. He asks, what advice would you have for other fintech startups interested in using business-to-business software for their business?
Two things. So first, your network is vitally important if you're looking to go into the business-to-business space. So I know someone who foolishly has CIO in my title. I get a lot of cold calling. And yeah, to actually stand out and get into the door, it's really good to know someone so you can get that warm introduction. The other is in business to business, the sales cycle is much longer. Business customers generally have a lot more power, they have much higher demands. So I think, yeah, if you're looking to go into that business to business space, it is, worth having a good network and preparing yourself that the sales and implementation cycle is going to be a lot longer. The advantage is, however, there is a lot less churn, so you're not spending your time getting customers only for them to download an app, forget about it a week later.
Totally. And I guess having 60 years of corporate knowledge and experience in your team definitely helps with that.
Yes, Australia is not a large country when it comes to business contacts.
So we've got some tech-related questions here. And our first one is from Wayne, who asks, why is open data changing banking and what makes you successful in creating a business around open data? Yeah,
so definitely changing it that other people can get a foot in the door, really. So since banks have always had this data, they've used it to their advantage. They certainly haven't been interested in giving any of it out. So being forced to, this levels the playing field and gives much more smaller, agile fintechs a chance to actually play with the big boys. So you have this data, you can provide a lot of these services now. Why us specifically? So yeah, as I mentioned, we knew banking back when it was closed. So I guess between the tech experience and our co-founder Eric's experience in product business function, so I think that's where we've actually been lucky with the three founders that we've had. We have a very different skill set. So Eric, our CEO, he's been through all he has a spiel of how many banks and how many payment gateways he's worked for. It's a lot. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but he's got many business relationships. He's played the politics of business implementations and has much experience in the area. Mark is our network and regulations guy, so that's been vital. We would not have gotten accredited and got a ticket to play the game without that, and that's a big advantage that Skript has over other people. We don't have to pay an info security person an absolute fortune to do all this for us. We have one of the best in-house. So I guess my contribution to my own horn is, I've done a lot of IT and project management stuff and really been an all-rounder. So I guess I'm the one that kind of just, keeps things running.
And in early stage, as an early stage venture, and generally in early stage startups, you have a team, you have a few, you may have a few domain experts, but you have all-rounders, generalists, who really help you get to where you need to be by doing playing many roles, which all the founders do, but those generalists are very powerful in that early stage cycle of the startup lifetime. Yeah, and I should also shout out to Roy, our fantastic architect, who we couldn't have certainly done it without you bringing such an amazing architecture in, and all your R&D knowledge has been invaluable. So we just have the best people, really. You really do. Having been a member of the I-20 Hub for quite a few years, excellent community member, that's for sure. So we've got a question here from Josh, and this is a great question because it sort of opens up to where you think these things could go. Where do you see open banking heading in the future? If there was a perfect outcome for open banking how would it look to you?
Yep. My perfect open banking outcome would be, firstly, all the banks really being forced to give us the highest data standards. So that's probably level one. One big thing that the UK have that's really gotten them far more progress with open banking has been right access. So in my dream open banking, you would be able to make a payment, you would be able to apply for a new account, and Skript will take care of talking to your old bank. You don't have to do anything.
So that right access you mentioned, what exactly does that mean? Sorry.
Yep, so at the moment open banking is you can only get data. So you can get the customer data, you can get account data. We would like to be able to affect things with our requests. So we would like to be able to make a request, do a payment, make a request, open an account.
Be more proactive with your data.
Yeah, so when we've got this data, we'd actually like to be able to do things with it. So if you had a tool that compared all that open banking product data, and based on the product data we have and your personal data, this home loan is much better for you than the one that you're currently on. Now, we would like to say, would you like to apply for this home loan? You click a button, yes. We have all your data there, so we can just make a request to the new institution, and that would be done straight away. Or maybe even if we do have this knowledge and you say, well, no, I really want to stay with my current institution, can you negotiate a better deal for me? So it might also be good to say, we've got this and this. Hey, Westpac, how about it?
That's great. I didn't picture it that way. And it makes me wonder, what if that was to happen, if that outcome was to happen, how would that affect insurance policy, compare the market style, startup ventures, and all other platforms that you see online who are comparing different policies, different interest rates, different products, if we all had access to that anyway, if it was just this thing we had?
It's probably not going to be great for them. Working for a health insurer, I have been on the other end of the compare the markets, and yeah, they make their money by charging the companies to be on. So I guess if those companies are to survive, they're going to have to look at what they can provide beyond the data that the CDR is giving. So maybe they have to go to each insurer and do special deals. So if you go through the CDR network, you might get this rate, but Compare the Market has done the work, and we've negotiated a 10% discount for you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be quite disruptive to those businesses.
Definitely. We've got some challenge-related questions here, and Dave asks, we get this all the time actually, what has been the biggest hurdle in your journey so far?
Yeah, so definitely the amount of work that it's taken us to get to market. So that's really affected all facets of the business, so how much money we spend, actually being able to get the money, finding someone who's quite understanding the fact that it is going to be so much work to get out into market. So yeah, and honestly I think day to day we would all love to be further along than we are, to be out there with more customers, but it's something that takes time. So that's certainly the biggest challenge for Skript.
I think if you ask any founder, they would say we'd love to have more customers, we'd love to spend more time with our customers.
True, everyone would love to be further along than they are.
Yeah. Siggy's asked a great question, and this is something that we really sort of prescribe to early stage founders, which is validating the problem, making sure that there's enough of a market out there for you to solve this problem in. So he's asked, what is the journey behind Skript's validating of their problem? You have 60 years of corporate knowledge. How did you know that this was worth it to go leave your existing day jobs and found Skript?
Yeah, so I guess it was actually corporate knowledge to look at this and see, this is a huge initiative, this is complete transformation of the industry, And knowing what that data actually can do is a huge advantage that we've had at Skript. So as far as validating, again, the network, the experience is something that's been very important. So we know a lot of these businesses. We've been able to talk frankly to them about their problems, and we've gotten fantastic feedback. So when you do actually have that connection with someone, they can be brutally honest. So they can say things like, your UX is quite boring, but I think your product is very good.
So this leads into a great question from Yvette, who's asked at that early stage, what was it like developing a product and launching it? What were you hacking away at home, or were you still working in your day job, or had you decided we're going to found Skript and now we'll build a prototype? How did that come along?
Yep, so it was actually a few months in before we even were hacking away at something, because we spent a lot of time actually investigating open banking. Because it was something that was so new, we really needed, even despite all the banking experience we had, to get up to speed with the legislation, which is also one of the worst parts of the job. And yeah, the solutions that were in the market, what people needed. And yeah, from there we do have, deep in an S3 bucket somewhere, a BFM prototype that we actually made through browser executed React. You're not allowed to look at it, have I? And yeah, many previous versions of that. So we have, repositories littered with prototypes that we've made along the way. And yeah, now we're accredited and we have a great team. We're going so much faster, and no more browser executed React is certainly of a much better quality. But it has been a journey.
Definitely. I think there's a common saying, if you're still proud of your very first prototype, you're doing something wrong.
Or you've started too late, yes.
Yeah.
That one comes up often in our meetings.
I bet. So we'll finish off with our submitted questions with Glenn, who's a valued VMS mentor in our VMS program. He's asked, the fundraising environment has changed considerably from Skript's initial external raise. How important is it for startups to do due diligence on VCs to ensure they stick by startups in tough times as well as good times?
So I feel Glenn's cheating a little bit here, because we've actually gone to him with this exact problem. So as I mentioned, back probably about 6-7 months ago, VCs couldn't give away enough money to open banking startups. There was money in the market, it was a hot topic, but almost overnight, the market turned towards the very end of the year, and VCs almost completely shut up shop and completely changed their attitude to everything. So we have been quite lucky with the VCs we've chosen. So yes, I would say it is very important to vet a VC to see how they will treat you in tough times as well as good. And even from the top with the huge VCs like the SoftBanks, the Y Combinators, you can see that everyone's putting pressure on founders. So cut costs, make this money last as long as you can, because you do not want to be out getting funding now. I think anyone who saw Klarna's latest raise, their value decreased by a factor of 7. So anyone that's raising at the moment, they're doing it because they have to.
And they're getting really bad terms.
Yes, on really bad terms. The VCs are looking for a bargain at the moment. But yeah, so we have been quite lucky, but as I said, everyone in the industry is getting pressure from their VCs to keep costs down, to make money last.
Definitely extend that runway as far as you can.
Yes.
We have a few minutes left before parking ticks over to 9, and so if anyone has a question from the audience, we'd love to hear it from you.
Hello.
Hi.
It seems like this is, there's a lot of regulatory involvement here as far as both what you're able to do now and what we're looking to do in the future. What, if anything, do you do to be proactive towards promoting or shaping that future legislation?
Yeah, so we are actually involved in a lot of government groups. So next Tuesday there's a big meeting that the ACCC have put together with the current CDR participants to actually shape the design. So one thing, the government has been very collaborative on that, but yeah, it is on us to be at all those forums and getting heard there.
I guess as one of 22, you've kind of had to pay to play to get in early.
Yes.
You've also got the opportunity to speak with the regulators and influence their decisions and how that legislation is shaped moving forward.
Yes. So we're very lucky that we have contact at the ACCC, Louise, who's amazing. She's probably going to get sacked from government when people work out just how efficient she is. But yeah, she is someone that's probably going to single-handedly make CDR work, because she gets on to people, she gets on to the banks and actually makes sure that this CDR thing is working.
She's literally wielding that stick.
She is.
Yeah, that's great.
And she's a person that everyone listens to.
Any other questions? Yes, John.
Thanks, Sarah. It's really exciting to see what you've done, and congratulations. And also on being such a great mum.
Oh, thank you.
You mentioned, so that's a huge thing. So what I wanted to know is, how much do you have to give away shareholder-wise or control-wise when you are engaging a venture capitalist?
Yeah, so that's the biggest challenge with venture capital funding is you need money, but you don't want to give away the whole company to get it. So ideally, you don't want to give away more than 10 to 20%. And it is a negotiation game at the moment. So it's, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess 10 to 20% is the figure, but it's really a big negotiation process to actually get the value. And at the moment, people going out there certainly don't.
And do you use a project vehicle rather than your originating entity to engage with venture capital?
We use the Skript company name just to engage. Luckily, our co-founder Eric has started previous startups, so he has been great at negotiating with these VCs. And yeah, various advisors that we've had that have helped us with contacts and yeah, looking at terms to make sure that we don't get put in a bad situation.
I think a great resource that I and many other founders in the region have read and use all over the world, actually, Slicing Pie. It started as a book, but it's a whole platform now. But it gives you a good example of what stage you're at in your venture journey and what you should be giving away, raising, what sort of terms you should use, what sort of investment vehicle you should use, whether it be a safe or a traditional round. It's a really great resource and a short book that's super actionable when it comes to fundraising.
Yeah.
Slicing Pie?
Slicing Pie.
Slicing Pie.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
As you said before, very regulated industry. A lot of it's like, how do you differentiate yourself in that industry?
That is a very good point, because it is, and one thing we found in particular, so to actually be able to give any open banking data to someone, you as a consumer have to explicitly consent to the process. And it is a real frustration in that we are heavily regulated, so we have to stick to their way of doing things. They have UX guidelines that specify you must at least have a 14-point font, down to that level of detail. And it is not the UX we would have designed. So yeah, because of the regulation, we are stuck with things that we can't change. So I guess where we differentiate is not so much on the technical level, even though we make fantastic solutions, they're well architected behind the scenes, but people only see that kind of stuff when it doesn't work. So we put a lot of effort into the customer experience where we can actually, change things, and talking to people and solving their actual problems, because you can have the most beautiful technology out there, your interface can be as slick, but if you're not making things cheaper and easier for people, then you're not doing anything really of great value. So we differentiate by getting in and listening to people.
That's great feedback, getting feedback for what you're doing.
Yes.
Great point, getting feedback for what you're doing and listening to customers to influence your trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love feedback. It's really a personal weakness of mine, but it is vitally important. So, as I say, you do have to eat your feedback vegetables.
That's a great saying. We have a couple of minutes left. Any other questions before we all break for parking? Yes, Matt.
So you mentioned before, like Excel is massive in finance and those sort of legacy industries, and it's a big challenge of breaking people's habits of using those sort of products. In saying that, Excel is fantastic for a lot of things. You mentioned that you are looking to provide a better solution for them. Do you see that, breaking people's usage of tools like Excel as a major hurdle, and do you have a strategy around approaching that in their workflow?
Yeah, so obviously we do have to, go in and play nice with Excel. It's Excel. It's been powering the world economy for 30 years now. But I guess to show these people that, there is more out there than Excel. And you would be surprised, some people will fight to the death to have their career of maintaining a crappy Excel spreadsheet for their entire life. So to show that, we can give this data to you and it's already in a nice format and you can share it much easier. So I think to get people away from, if anything, the combination of Excel and email. And there is a certain amount of playing nice. You can't ignore Excel exists. You have to be able to complement it to an extent. So you're not going to get people away from Excel overnight. So obviously we, want to export the data, but we want to do the hard work before it gets to Excel. And have something, that's a much nicer experience for their customers, really. So it's all well and good for a mortgage broker or an accountant to want to play in Excel their whole life, but you and I, we don't want, a day's worth of scanning and a massive Excel spreadsheet that's generally locked to fill out. So this is helping them help their customers a lot more. So, and that's what the consumer data right's about, really. So making things better for us, not to spend as much time doing that kind of personal admin to us.
Totally. Behaviour change is a long game. It's definitely a hard thing to do, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, so anyone who's been doing something in an industry for 30 years, it is a hard slog.
Yes, definitely. People's entire careers have been spent in Excel.
Yeah, so even much older technology like checks, NIB particularly had a challenge of not being able to get rid of them because doctors' receptionists, who I'm sure we're all slightly scared of, refused to do anything else.
Do you have time for one last question?
I have a question.
Yes, Mika.
Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. And this is all very new to me, so it's really exciting. You mentioned that you had seen other products overseas in the UK doing things better, they were cool to look at. Have you reached out to any of those people developing those products, and has there been good receptivity of sharing what they're doing, sharing product development? Has that helped?
We have had a look and we've managed to talk to some of those people. So there's a company, Swoop, overseas that we did have a connection with. Open banking in the UK is very different though. So firstly, does things like payments, but it's actually a lot more peer-to-peer than open banking in Australia. So I think a lot of these companies, because the question would be, if UK's open banking is so amazing, what's stopping all these companies coming over here and just giving the same solutions, is that, yeah, while the learnings are great, we are doing something completely different over here. And another thing that's unique is Australia are looking to do every industry. So UK and Europe, they've very much stopped at banking, where Australia is looking to do energy, telecommunications, investments. So yeah, while there are learnings there, they're quite different domains.